I'm not standing in the Shomron, but you can see the ancient gates around me again. And we've been here before. We've discussed how gates were of central importance, not only, of course, for the security of the city, but for other needs as well. So, for example, we've spoken of the kings and judges that sat in the gates and more. But for today's perek, I want to discuss specifically the gate as a marketplace. Again, we're not talking about in the doorway itself where people are going to like trip over them. We're talking about the courtyards between the different gatehouses. You had a first gatehouse and then an inner gatehouse, and in between them you had this big open area that was also, of course, walled in, and that was the main marketplace or the place where people would congregate. And of course, in times of security, they would also come into the city, but specifically come in for gathering together and each be able to trade their different goods and exchange things. Today, if you want to know what the exchange rate is, and you go, let's say, to one of these money changers on the street, so then when you walk up to him, what are you going to ask? How do you say that in Hebrew? And today, in modern Hebrew, the word is sha'ar. Mahasha'ar. If I want to say what's the exchange rate between the dollar and the shekel, that's how I'm going to say it, which is such a fascinating thing. Because where does that come from? That comes from this perek. Vayomer Elisha, Shem'u Devar Hashem. Ko Amar Hashem Ka'et Machar, Se'ah Solet B'Shekel, Visatayim se'orim b'shekel b'sha'ar Shomron. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. Okay, so Elisha says the city of Shomron is under siege. That means nothing's getting in and nothing's getting out. And of course, as as supplies begin to dwindle, the prices rise and things become more and more and more and more expensive because supply and demand, and there's a lot less supply and a lot more demand. Things become very expensive and there's just not enough for everyone. And that leads, of course, to the tragic stories that we end up hearing. But either way, in this case, what the Navi said, Elisha says, I have good news for you. Tomorrow, even though the prices are exorbitant today, tomorrow at this time already, you're going to have a whole seah of solet, a whole measurement of solet, fine flour, is only going to cost a shekel. Now, shekel again doesn't mean a coin; it means a certain set mishkal. Comes from the word mishkal. They used different metals and they would measure it on these scales, and there was a set measurement. Hopefully, it was accurate. Otherwise, people were cheating. For example, you'd have a stone. We spoke about this with the pim. You'd have a stone which would be that certain amount. So the shekel, the set weight, visatayim seorim, and two seahs of seorim of omer of the barley, the shekel. So you have one shekel for a seah of solet of fine flour, or two seahs of barley. Even if you just want to exchange between the two, let's say you'd have to do 2 for 1 from between barley and fine flour, apparently, where Bashar Shomron, in the exchange of Shomron or in the market of Shomron, in the gates of Shomron. And that's really where this term comes from, which is amazing. Keeping in mind a number of things. One, keeping in mind that one of the places where this will most be felt, this problem of the siege and the famine that's going on, is right here in the marketplace in the city gates. So this is really the area where the market and the exchange happens. So this is where you really feel those prices going up. And the amazing thing of the language of Hebrew being brought back to life after 2,000 years. Now, we still had Hebrew as a language for learning in, and there were certain Ushim that would still be written in Hebrew, although not all of them even. But as a spoken language, it disappeared from the face of the earth in essence. And we come back here, and not only do we return to our land after 2,000 years, which is unprecedented, an exiled nation coming back after 2,000 years or any time, and re-establishing a state again in their ancient homeland is unprecedented. We don't have that by any even of the great empires around us. They're gone. And we continue to exist because we held on to our Torah, and Hashem brought us back just like he promised through the Nevi'im. And that's the Navi coming to life. And that's really, really crazy. And not only that, we even bring back and we revive our language. And that can't be taken for granted because, again, no one else has ever done that. No other nation has revived an ancient language and brought it back to daily use. You walk around, I remember one of the craziest things, it's kind of funny, but when people would ask, I had never been to Eretz Israel until I was 18. Since then, I've tried to make up for it by not leaving anymore. But I remember when people would ask me, what do you want me to bring you back from Israel? My siblings, let's say, I'm a little embarrassed, but I'd say, a cereal box, like an empty cereal box. I don't even need the cereal. That's not as impressive to me. But it was the funniest thing to me to see a cereal box or a can of Coke with Hebrew writing on it. Because for me, Hebrew was just in the Siddur and the Chumash and the ancient books, meaning books that I still learn from, the Svarim that I learned from, but that's all it was. It wasn't a spoken live language. And to see this was just such a funny thing to me, an amazing thing to me. And even when I did end up getting here and I'd look around and I'd see the signs on the different stores just written in Hebrew, it would always bring a smile to my face. Today, I'm a little more used to it, of course, and that happens. But what an amazing, amazing thing to be able to come back to our land. And if you want to, I always say that we're trying to bring the Tanakh to life, and I really do try to do that. But the truth is, bringing Tanakh to life is simply being here. And when you're here, you are Tanakh coming to life. You're the Nevuah. You are what the Navi was talking about when he said we're going to be able to come back. We're going to be able to walk these streets. Our kids are going to play in these playgrounds, and we're going to be able to live here as a people, as a nation in our ancestral homeland. And no other nation and no other Navi would try to give such a prophecy, and because it wouldn't work. And here we are. We're back. And the words of the Navi are coming alive every day through every step we take here. So it's a huge plus to be able to be here in Eretz Yisrael in our time period. And all that comes about, even when you're just going for something as simple as exchanging some dollars for shekels.